You know what? That doesn't mean that Hillary would have been a good choice either. She was a terrible choice. She's a corrupt politician, one of the most unlikable people that's ever run for office. She, in so many ways,
crazy shit.
And they were trying to get it. They were trying to get people to be supporting her just because she's a woman. There was a lot of that. It's like, this is going to be her history. You know, women, ladies, I stand with her. So there's all these women that have this blind allegiance towards this career.
But Hillary is just like almost an android.
What do you mean by that?
She's not like, can you imagine talking with her about like human pain and like stuff that you're going through? Absolutely, like it wouldn't
register.
You would, exactly. You would never be able to reach her heart.
She lost the presidency, then rewrote the loss as destiny, and still can't find the exit sign. While America moved on, she stayed behind like a political pop-up ad, loud, outdated, and impossible to close. Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet-David aren't here to debate. They're here to bulldoze years of carefully polished fiction. From email scandals to foundation fog, they cut through the myth with wit, sarcasm, and facts, sharp enough to slice through every recycled excuse she's ever thrown at the public. If you're enjoying this no-nonsense breakdown, make sure to subscribe and like the video. It helps push the truth past the noise and keeps the real talk coming.
For what really is going on. Like, I was infuriated when people that I knew that I was friends with were trying to tell me that Hillary Clinton was a good choice. And that's the same choice. I'm like, look, I don't know if she's murdered people, but I know that I worry that she's murdered people. That's a real, I really wonder. Like, this Seth Rich shit.
I know, first of all, just leave, you don't even need to go there. You know,
there's so many other things.
There's so many other things that we know for a fact.
The Clinton Foundation, for instance.
What was Hillary like? I hear she's a sweetheart.
Really? That's a joke,
obviously,
right?
I'm being.
That's
I'm being
oh my god!
I just wanted to see a reaction.
That's one person that's not a sweetheart. That's not a sweetheart.
What was she like?
She's very cynical and jaded.
Cynical or jaded? So that means at one point she wasn't cynical and jaded.
I probably wasn't.
Hillary Clinton still carries herself like she's owed a presidency. Like the White House was her reserved table and someone dared sit in her seat. The delusion isn't just baked in, it's layered with entitlement and wrapped in legacy fumes. Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet-David didn't need to invent new material for this roast. They just had to point at the trail of political breadcrumbs she's been leaving since the 90s. Breadcrumbs soaked in scandals, media spin, and speeches that sound like a robot lost a bet with a teleprompter.
If I have 10 people that at one point in my life were best friends, and prior to meeting me, they had never done cocaine before. These 10 people, 10 out of 10, eventually became cocaine addicts and killed themselves, simply by association with me. I probably have some bad influence on these people. This lady named Hillary Clinton, one too many of her best friends or close friends have committed suicide in the random ways. She is not the most trusted person, even by the left. She was supposed to be president.
You know what people stop talking about? Do you remember when they blamed Benghazi on some bullshit
video
movie? Yeah, some video that someone made.
Right.
Was it like the Tears of Muslims or something like that? Or I forget that.
Nobody even knew it existed.
Nobody knew it existed. And everybody knew it was bullshit.
Right.
And they were pushing that as a narrative. Like, this is what was the motivation behind. And everybody.
She rebranded losing like it was a personality trait. Not just any loss, but one of the most spectacular political faceplants in modern history. And still, she carries herself as if America made a mistake and she's just waiting for the country to realize it. Like a bad ex expecting a tearful reunion. Hillary's political career isn't a journey, it's a rerun nobody asked to reboot. But here she is again, offering commentary from the sidelines like a coach who never won a game but still insists the whistle works.
Adam, out of this list, who's the most important?
Out of this list, it's Bill Clinton. But Bill Clinton will not say shit. Hillary Clinton will not say anything. He's the former president of the United States. When did he leave office? 25 years ago. You think retroactively Bill Clinton is going to be held responsible for anything? Zero. The only person who's ever been attempted to be held responsible for anything is Donald Trump. Why? Because the entire system, the entire swamp was trying to get him. And even then, it didn't work. And by the inch of a bullet, he's still here.
Joe Rogan saw the smoke and dove in without hesitation. Hillary's entire pitch to voters could be summed up as "I'm not the other guy." But she forgot to be someone people actually like. She spent more time polishing her public image than actually connecting with people. The result was a carefully manufactured facade that cracked under the weight of its own awkwardness. Patrick Bet-David didn't even need to swing, he just had to point at her greatest hits. The shifting accents, the awkward pandering, and the I was for it before I was against it gymnastics.
So there's all these women that have this blind allegiance towards this career politician. It's completely full of shit. She's been full of shit forever. If you watch the conversation between James Comey, when James Comey testified about what he did and what they found with the Hillary Clinton emails, and then her version of it, she's just a straight liar.
Yeah.
She deleted 30.
Let's talk about the email saga. Oh, the emails. Hillary handled classified information through a private server setup that quickly became a major controversy, raising serious questions about judgment and security practices. When the backlash hit, her response leaned heavily on technical explanations and claims of misunderstanding from critics, which only fueled more debate. Patrick Bet-David framed it as a lesson in avoiding accountability, delivered with confidence and a steady stream of denials that kept the controversy alive rather than putting it to rest.
Bill Clinton officiated your wedding with Huma, your wife, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So you've been very close, and your wife, is it still wife or is it ex-wife? I think it's separated since 2017, right?
We're separated. We co-parent Jordan, but we're separated.
Okay. And, you know, she was a right-hand person to Hillary Clinton in 2016 while the scandal was taking
For
place.
years before that, she was with Hillary for, she's 20 years.
And the whole thing with the life insurance, you know, the email, 650,000, the one folder with the word life insurance and the files that are in there. So the next thing that people said, you got to ask him is the following. So, you know, Rob, if you can pull up this story, I'm not going to buy into this one. Well, 9 out of 12 cops, NYPD, who saw the email and saw what was in that laptop, you know, committed suicide. And it was, you know, 7 of them since June, and it was the most ever that this took place. And
Joe Rogan took one look at the public persona she tried to build, the pantsuits, the rehearsed smiles, the I'm just like you photo ops, and saw straight through it. Her attempts at relatability often landed awkwardly, like someone trying too hard to fit into a space that wasn't theirs. What was meant to feel natural instead came across as overly produced, as if every line had passed through multiple layers of approval before reaching her voice. When she did go off script, Joe Rogan pointed out how those moments often didn't help either, with attempts at humor or warmth sometimes falling flat instead of connecting. She tried to be warm, tried to be tough, tried to be approachable, and still struggled to land any of them in a convincing way.
Big problem. That Clinton Foundation is fucking insane. And all these people that were blind supporters of Hillary that didn't look at that, like, how do you not find a giant problem with that?
Right, right. And that book by Schweitzer talks about it. He goes in detail about that stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. How's that guy staying
I'm
alive?
surprised. That's what I was just going to say. After the
he's
Clinton
not going
cash,
after the Russians.
dude, Clinton cash was bad enough. This one's
Yeah.
even worse. I'm surprised he's not dead.
I wonder how many people are actually.
Joe pulled no punches, breaking down her foreign policy record like a reality show elimination round. Libya and Syria became symbols of decisions that critics say contributed to instability and long-running fallout. He argued that her approach often leaned on speeches, slogans, and confident framing, but left questions about execution and long-term outcomes. And yet, she continued to present herself with the same certainty, as if every move had been fully validated by results on the ground. The discussion also turned to the Clinton Foundation, which has faced criticism and scrutiny over donations and potential conflicts of interest. Patrick Bet-David pointed to the numbers and reporting around foreign contributions and blurred lines between charity and influence, framing it as an example of why the organization has remained controversial in political debates. The broader point they raise is how sharply divided interpretations of her legacy remain. Where supporters see public service, critics see a record still heavily debated.
The Hillary Clintons are the people that are like maybe disrespectful to the servers, and you find out about it, they sent food back.
The Democrat wall of support for Hillary Clinton's use of a private, unsecure server for official government emails and attachments. Yeah, I remember all of that.
It's not the main guy, it's the support staff.
Her party rallied to her defense. And to this day, it maintains she did nothing wrong. Of course.
The main people are not the president.
As if that woman has a scintilla of credibility on any issue related to national security.
The main
They
people
need
are the people that
it.
are running Raytheon,
Yeah.
the people that are running these gigantic companies that make weapons.
Exactly what is her list of successes? From Haiti to Benghazi, she was a total.
That argument was repeated so often, it started to feel like a broken record, stuck in a burning jukebox. Joe's breakdown of that tactic was sharp, pointing to what he saw as a pattern of framing criticism through a lens of empowerment while avoiding tougher questions underneath. Then came the Russia narrative. Hillary and her supporters pointed to Russian interference as a significant factor in the 2016 election, along with broader concerns about misinformation and influence campaigns. Critics, including Rogan and Patrick Bet-David in their commentary, used that as a jumping-off point to argue that too many other factors were being dismissed. They described it as a long chain of explanations that kept shifting outward, placing responsibility on institutions, media, and outside actors. In their view, the bigger takeaway wasn't just about interference, but about how contested the explanations for the loss have remained. From that perspective, her political presence is portrayed less as a clean legacy and more as a deeply disputed chapter in modern American politics, one still interpreted very differently depending on where you stand.
And rightly so, but people forget this. She did talk about a firefight that she was involved in.
I was under sniper fire, and the worst thing about that people didn't give a shit about, she said when she was in Bosnia, she was under sniper fire. It's like, wait a minute, you're throwing the Secret Service under the bus, because what kind of Secret Service is going to let the First Lady run under sniper fire? And she just basically...
When Benghazi came up, Hillary's response leaned heavily into careful framing, legal language, and tightly managed messaging. The debate around the 2012 attack remained highly polarized, with critics arguing that key questions were not fully answered, while others pointed to multiple official investigations that examined the events in detail. Rogan's commentary framed the moment as a turning point where public trust became more divided, arguing that it reinforced doubts among some viewers about how accountability was handled. In contrast, supporters saw it as a highly politicized issue that was repeatedly investigated and often used as a political talking point. The broader criticism extended to her communication style, which was often described by detractors as overly scripted and heavily managed by advisors and consultants. Her defenders, however, would argue that such structure is standard in high-level political environments where messaging is carefully coordinated. On issues of classified information and leaks, her campaign and allies consistently emphasized national security concerns and the importance of protecting sensitive material, while critics raised concerns about transparency and accountability. The result is a legacy that remains sharply divided, interpreted very differently depending on political perspective.
So many other things.
There's so many other things that we know for a fact.
The Clinton Foundation, for instance.
So, the Iraq War. I'm old enough, Joe, to remember when being for the Iraq War was a disqualifier in a Democratic primary. That's where I'm from. That's why she lost to Barack Obama the first goddamn time she ran.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we're supposed to... Now people, like Joy Behar says, that was a long time ago. Forget about it. Why don't you go tell that to a soldier's... to a mother?
Patrick's breakdown of her double standards was sharp, direct, and cutting. Joe also looked at her post-2016 speaking circuit, treating it like a case study in how former politicians monetize influence. After the campaign trail came the speaking trail, paid appearances at major institutions, companies, and events where high-profile figures are often invited to share insights. Critics framed this shift as a move from public service to paid commentary, while supporters would argue it's a standard path for former officials with decades of experience. The speeches themselves became part of the debate. Some saw them as reflective analyses of past political experience. Others viewed them as polished but repetitive talking points, delivered in a high-paying circuit. Rogan's commentary portrayed her reappearances in political discussion as poorly timed or out of step with public sentiment, while others would argue she remains a relevant voice in political discourse. Overall, the criticism centers on perception, how a long public career transitions into life after office, and how differently that transition is interpreted depending on political perspective.
What people stop talking about, do you remember when they blamed Benghazi on some bullshit
Video.
movie? Yeah, some video that someone made.
Right.
Was it like the Tears of Muslims or something like that? Or I forget that.
Nobody even knew it existed.
Nobody knew it existed. And
Yeah.
everybody knew it was bullshit.
Right.
And they were pushing that as a narrative. Like, this is what was the motivation behind. And everybody...
And the worst part is she still floats the idea of running again, like a sequel nobody greenlit, ready to test attention spans all over again. Joe and Patrick reacted with disbelief, treating the idea less as serious momentum and more as political deja vu. From their perspective, the suggestion of another run reads as a refusal to step out of a storyline that's already closed, as if the political landscape hasn't moved on. Critics frame it as a disconnect from current reality, while supporters would say it reflects continued engagement in public life and party politics. Joe's and Patrick's commentary leans into the idea that public reaction has already been clearly measured through past elections, and that repeating the cycle feels unnecessary to them. Others, however, would argue that political comebacks are not unusual in American history, and that experienced figures often remain part of the national conversation. The broader point being made is about timing, perception, and relevance. How long a public figure can remain in the spotlight after major electoral losses, and how differently that question is answered depending on who you ask.
They rigged the DNC, they rigged the primaries so that Bernie Sanders was going to lose. She had her people into the DNC
that was crazy.
Way in advance. That Donna Brazile book about it is mind-blowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing was, he was packing fucking stadiums.
Yeah.
She couldn't even fill a fucking high school gymnasium.
Right. But she was pulling all the strings, and she had all the favors that she was pulling in, and she had a shit ton of money behind her, and they were completely arrogant, and all the liberal elite in the media thought there was no chance that she was going to lose. She's 95% shoo-in to win the presidency, and she walked around like she...
And still, she lingers, waiting for the next camera, the next platform, the next round of applause that never comes. The criticism doesn't really end because the conversation around her never fully disappears either. She keeps appearing in political discussions like a familiar rerun, recognizable lines, familiar framing, and the same polished delivery that supporters see as experience and critics see as repetition. Joe and Patrick don't need a dramatic finale for their commentary. They point to a long public record that has already been heavily analyzed, debated, and reinterpreted over time. From their perspective, the story they're reacting to is one of high ambition, major visibility, and deeply divided public opinion about leadership and legacy. Others would frame that same story very differently, emphasizing policy work, political longevity, and influence inside the Democratic Party. In the end, it's less about a final verdict and more about how her career continues to be viewed through completely different lenses, still discussed, still disputed, and still part of the broader political conversation.